Students, this lecture is going to be on histology, tissues and organs. By the end of this lecture, you will be able to know the following: epithelial tissues, the different types of connective tissue in animals, the 3 types of muscle tissues, and the type of nervous tissue. Tissues in animals are multicellular. There are 4 primary types of tissues, as you can see: nervous, muscle, connective, and epithelial. It's important to recall that tissues are a group of similar cells and that these tissues combine to form organs like skin or kidneys or lung or small intestine, and that they have a specific specialized function within the body. Organs, as you know, are organized into organ systems, and they perform functions. For example, the circulatory system, which includes the heart and blood vessels, and the digestive system, consisting of several organs, including stomach, intestines, liver, and pancreas. And then organ systems come together to create an entire organism. All right, so let's start off with nervous tissue. And nervous tissues are made up of cells specialized to receive and transmit electrical impulses from specific areas in our body and then to send them to specific locations in our body. The main cell in the nervous system, which we're going to be taking a look at, is the neuron. Okay, and this is just a smear of that neuron. All right, and let's take a look at the different parts, the structure of a typical neuron. So the large structure with a central nucleus is the cell body of the neuron. So here we have the cell body, and within that is our nucleus. Projections from the cell body are dendrites. So we've got these dendrites that are receiving input, or a single axon. So this is your axon. And that specializes in transmitting these impulses. Right? When you get to that particular slide, what you are going to label is the cell body, the nucleus, and the axon. You can also label dendrites. All right, let's move on to our next slide. All right, so the next slide that you'll be looking at is a composite slide of muscle tissue. Now there are 3 types of muscle tissue in animal bodies: smooth, skeletal, and cardiac. So here's our smooth, our skeletal, and our cardiac. We also have an extra slide in your slide box of just cardiac muscle, because the one on the composite slide isn't always the best. Now they differ by the presence or absence of these striations. So if you take a look here, these have striations, okay? And we also have striations here. But if you notice, no striations, which is why it's called smooth muscle. They also differ in the presence or absence of the number of nuclei, and also whether it's voluntary or involuntarily controlled. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And also their location within the body. So you should be able to know that if you saw a slide of smooth muscle, what would be an organ example. So with the smooth muscle, we don't have striations. We have a single nucleus in the center, as you guys can see. So one nucleus. It is involuntary. And you're going to find that in your visceral organs. For an example, you're going to find that in your small intestines. Let's go to our skeletal muscle. So yes to striations, many nuclei. So take a look here, many nuclei. Usually attached to the skeleton. And the movement is voluntary. All right, and the last one, cardiac muscle, involuntary movement, found in the walls of the heart. And you're also going to have one single cellular nucleus. All right, so I'm going to quickly compare the three muscles. So smooth muscle, no striations, while the skeletal muscle do have striations, and along with the cardiac muscle. But unlike the skeletal muscle, it only has one nucleus. Also, something really important, the cardiac muscle has something called intercalated discs. So these things, grab my pencil here. So these things right here are called intercalated discs. And so you're not going to see those in your skeletal muscle. All right. Then the walls of the blood vessels and the tubes of the digestive system and the tubes of the reproductive system are all composed of this smooth muscle. So let's move on to our epithelial muscle. All right, so epithelial tissue, this covers the outside of organs and the structures in the body that line the lumens of organs in a single layer or multiple layers of the cell. There are many different types of epithelia that are classified by shapes of cells present and the number of layers of that cell. And we're going to be going into those layers. Okay. You can have simple epithelia, or if it's multiple layers, it's called stratified. The different shapes, no, we'll get to the different shapes in a minute. So you have different locations. So we've got our nasal passage, we have where it consists of columnar. Within our kidneys, we have simple cuboidal. So again, one layer. Urinary tract system, you have something called transitional, and we'll get to that. In our lungs, we have simple squamous, so different shape. In our esophagus, we have stratified squamous, so again, multiple layers of the squamous shape. And then simple columnar is just these columns, right? These column-shaped cells, one layer. Let's go a little bit more into the actual shapes. All right, so epithelial types, simple squamous. It almost looks like squished cells here. And then you've got simple cuboidal, and they almost look like a cube. Your simple columnar, again, where you would find the lining of the intestines, look like columns. And then your stratified squamous are multiple layers. We're not really going to go into post-stratified columnar, so you don't need to worry about that one. And then for transitional, we will discuss this in more detail, but this is what you're going to find in the bladder. Okay, so you're going to be looking at a slide called an epithelium composite slide, and this is going to include stratified squamous, simple cuboidal, and simple columnar. You're also going to look at a bladder slide, which is going to explain your transitional epithelium. And so from here, you are going to be able to identify each of the cells. So let's take a look at these pictures. This here is a picture of your simple columnar. This is what you would find in the linings of your small intestine. here we have that cube shape. Oh, and here, so you've got columns, one layer. That's why it's simple. Simple cuboidal is this one here. This you would find inside of, I said before, your kidneys. Okay. Here you would have your stratified squamous. And stratified squamous you would find in skin, in your mouth, so that there's multiple layers. Now for your transitional, this is only found, so here, this is only found in your bladder and your ureter. And the cells that are arranged in that layer, they're arranged in the stratified layer, but they have the capability of appearing piled up on each other in a relaxed, emptied bladder. But as it fills, they unfold and expand to hold the volume of all the urine inside of it, and then it becomes thinner, and they look thick to thin, so they transition out. Now here we have a slide of the various types, the different types of connective tissue in animals. There's lots of different types. You have your fibrous connective tissue, and that's what's going to connect your muscle to bone. Considering, as an example would be a tendon. You also have that loose connective tissue. That's what is under the skin. And that's what's going to be holding your skin to your muscle. And that's what we would have teased out for an animal dissection. You also have blood. You have adipose tissue, which is fat. You've got cartilage. And cartilage is found in multiple different places, in your nose, in your ears, sternum, at the end of bones. And then you also have bone, which is your densest type of connective tissue. Okay, so here are the different slides that you'll be looking at. We will have a blood smear slide, and that's going to be made up of mostly red blood cells and a few white blood cells, which are the ones you see here in purple. We are going to have hyaline cartilage, which is this one here. And in that, you are going to see these structures here. And those are called chondrocytes. Next, you will look at bone. For bone, you are going to label the central canal and the osteon. And so if you take a look here, this thing right here is called the osteon. And in the very center is your central canal. Bone can be divided into two different types of bone. So you can have compact bone and spongy bone. Compact bone is something that you would find in a long bone and the surface of flat bones, while spongy bone is found at the end of a long bone. So let's say that you've got a bone here. Okay, and so along here is where you would find your compact bone. And at the end, it's going to look like this. Is where you're going to find that spongy bone. Now, compact bone is organized into those osteons, of which we labeled here. Okay. Also, blood vessels and nerve are found in the central part of the structure, and you don't need to know all the different parts of the bone. Okay, and let's move on to our next thing. So adipose tissue. This is our adipose tissue, and that's just fat tissue. And then finally, we have this, and this is our fibrous tissue. So a fibrous connective tissue, it contains a large amount of collagen fibers and a few cells or matrix material. So here are some cells, lots of fibers. They are usually arranged irregularly, and then they're found in the areas of body where there's a lot of stress in all different directions. So they usually are connecting muscle to bone or bone to bone. So that is the end of this lecture. You are going to be looking at multiple slides. Please use this lecture to help you label what you would need to label. And if you have any questions, please let me know.